Well, guys, we're back for another world record review. I am so excited about this one. This is my favorite track, the objectively best track in the game. We're looking at the Shy Guy Beach No Shortcut world record. I should also mention really quickly, there is a poll going on my channel. If you guys want to choose the next world record I review, go ahead and check that out. Go vote and determine the fate of my channel. How old is this? This is over a year old now, and I actually think this can be pushed down a little bit, and we'll go over why. This is one of the least played categories in this game. Even the glitch category I think is more popular than this, and someday I want to get worldwide tops here, but that'll be a discussion for another video. But before we get started on this, I want to talk about my channel really quick, guys. I'm closing in on 400 subscribers. I need you to get me there. Most of you are unsubscribed. Even though you keep watching the videos, I cannot understand what kind of person wouldn't subscribe. Even though you're watching all my videos, you need to just subscribe. Just help me get to 400. And if you guys want more of these, the best way of indicating that is by leaving a comment and a like. The feedback on these videos really does make a difference in terms of my motivation to make these videos. Show your support for some small creators, including myself, actually only myself. So yeah, with that being said, let's look at the world record history on this track. It's really just coming down to optimizing the current strategies, and there aren't really new strategies being used. And that's kind of been the case for a long time now. So let's go back to, say, 2015. Okay, we're gonna start there. We have a 121.8 by Liam. He was pretty dominant back in 2015, as well as Fox. We see Fox getting the first 0.7, and they kind of traded hands. And then we have Sword in the mix as well. Sword is famous for having basically no controversy, very non-controversial figure in the community. Love to see it. And we also have Liam improving by a millisecond. This is in 2017 now. And then Sosis got the record for the first time, getting a 121.496. This record stood a long time. I remember when this one was set. And then we have Casey once again. Actually, not once again. This is his first time getting the record. Around 2022, Casey started to really blossom as a player, getting more world records. We also have Dara in the mix. This was also in 2022, and this was right before he quit the game. Like, the one thing he wanted before he quit the game was the Shy Guy Beach world record, and I was so happy that he pulled through. And he got a pretty large world record in the process, so that's always cool to see. We got Casey again, cutting it down, and then we have Sosis getting the first 0.3, and then we have another 36 millisecond cut, down to the current world record, which was set in 2022, and we've really had no activity since then. The best splits definitely show there's still some room for improvement. Like we can see right here, it gives a 121, 125. With some with a single strategy still not totally taken advantage of. So let's go ahead and start this video. I think this volume is too loud. Also, before we get started, I am still edging. I'm using Microsoft Edge. I've already addressed the Edge controversy in my previous video. Go check it out. I looked at the free BKT on BC3. I think you would love to see it after you watch the entirety of this video. So looking at the worldwide top 10, it is actually fairly spread out for how short the category is. And you can see there just really is a big skill gap as we move up the top 10. There are quite a few players with 121s, but as you get into the mid 121 range, let alone a low 121, that's when you see just really, really impressive runs. When you get down to, I would say, the top 5 here, that's when it gets really tough to improve. And we will see why looking at this time. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, right away, we're already at a critical part of the track. There are two ways you can start this run off. One is by just realigning or kind of nudging in your wheelie as the race starts. The other is doing this start slide, and that saves probably 15 or so milliseconds. It never made total sense to me why this is faster, because as you can see, you're kind of driving perpendicular to the starting line. I guess apparently you are driving less of the track this way. But it's not that hard of a strategy. I haven't messed around with it too much personally. It is used on tracks like Luigi Circuit. So it leaves the starting line, and then right here we have a pool of water. We have like a little water stream right here. And the normal strategy, what everyone does if you're not on Magic Cruisers, you just hop over it. That's the only thing anyone's ever done. I have been curious about one thing in particular. You can, in some circumstances, just wheelie over this without rehopping, and you don't lose any speed. And I think it comes down to QM. I think Casey talked about going into lap 3, you have a very specific time or very specific pace, and you get a chain. You can kind of predict whether or not you're going to make it over or not without the rehop. Now in this case, there doesn't seem to be an easy way of doing this in terms of lap 1, so everyone, even including the world record holders, just do this. Okay, so moving on. We go off onto the first turn of the track, and the spear on the sand like this, it's very difficult to drive just because it's so slidey. It's kind of like Sherbet Land in that regard. Just the physics of how you make your turns is a little bit different, and we're already at a potential time loss here in the run. You can see these ghosts are very far apart. Perfect line, I would say, is what Sosis has. I'm actually going to go to his world record and see what his line is like. Okay, so he's racing the former world record, and as you can see, Sosis here, this is Sosis's run. He has a perfect alignment. You want to be with an absolute perfect alignment. You're almost touching this grass right here. That's going to give you the tightest alignment possible to get into the shroom, and you can see Casey is quite a bit wider than that. You can fit another spear right between them, and you can see this gap is only growing larger as time goes on. But wait a minute. He doesn't take the normal line that Sosis does. This is a famous backup strategy. If you end up with a wide line like Casey does, you can just straight up, no cap on jaw. You can go inside of the tree, and as you can see, it doesn't really lose any time. And from my experience, if you do it really well, it can even be faster. Now, I'm trying to see exactly what led to him being down, because as you can see, after this first turn, they were neck and neck. It's going to be kind of hard to compare since they are very far apart, but I'm going to see if I can figure out if there are any time losses in what Casey does here. And this grass is a little bit deceiving. You can actually drive quite a bit into this grass without being slowed down. It might have come down to the wheelie, because as you can see, Sosis got the wheelie out, but Casey didn't. And if you do this section very well, at least from my experience, it shouldn't lose any time. And if we let's look at the speedometer while he's in the shroom. So he's at 119. It doesn't totally show the red bars in the way I famously hate the red bar on YouTube. But you can see he's at 119. He gets a bit of a bounce as well while he's in the cut. And I want to see what happens while... Okay, he only dropped down to like 118 kilometers an hour, so really not significant. I want to look at Sosis's run, though, and see how he does it. Yeah, so he's at 120 kilometers the entire time during this cut, whereas Casey was at 119. But the consequence of, I guess, what his QM was, I'm trying to see if he did a wheelie input or not. I'm curious. Maybe he bounced and he couldn't get it. No, he didn't even do a wheelie input, so he didn't even go for the wheelie. Honestly, like when I go inside the tree, you can just get a wheelie input out. It's not that hard. For whatever reason, he just chose not to. And you'll see, I'm pretty sure he does do a wheelie on that section on laps 2 and lap 3. So yeah, so he exits the shroom, and they have pretty different alignments. I think that's just because of how they exit the shroom right here. Yeah, so actually they kind of line up in around the same place. They just have different angles going into it. But going into this section, the island section, this one's very difficult to do if you're new to Spear. If you're new, I would recommend kind of lining up around here and not this corner. The corner can be very difficult to do. You actually want to spin drift. You'll see he does do his... Oh no, he doesn't do a spin drift. I think his alignment just wasn't aggressive enough into the first island to justify that. You can see if you're going to land right here on the island, I think Sosis in this case is going to do a spin drift. Let's look at his run. Let's see what Sosis does. Yeah, so he does a spin drift there. So you can see on the analog stick, he's just going into the island, and he does a spin drift, and that allows you to rotate your bike and kind of move farther to the right at the same time. I'm going to slow this down just so we can watch it as a class. You can see he gets a great alignment going into the second island, despite him not having a lot of room to, make it to the island here. So that's just a good strategy if you end up taking it pretty tight. I think it's a little bit faster. The tighter you are, the better. It definitely gets harder to do. Sometimes the wheelie won't come out when you do the spin drift strategy. I don't know if that's QM, but in this case, it's totally fine. And you'll notice he does wheelie inputs between these islands. It makes it a lot easier to get over the islands. The airtime you get from your hop isn't as substantial when you don't do a wheelie. So when you get that wheelie out, it gives you basically more wiggle room to make it across these patches of water without any problem. And with that being said, we get to another significant part of the track, which is this island skip. Right here on the last island, we will notice that he does not do a hop over it. One moment. He doesn't do a hop here. You can just drift through it. And this is an absolutely infuriating part of the track. And it's just because it's totally QM. There are things you can do to mess it up, but if you're in the right spot, there's basically a maximum consistency, which I would estimate is around 50% if you do it perfectly. And it's just infuriating because it can kill runs on lap 3 if you just get unlucky with your bounces. It's not exactly clear to me. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what's causing some of the water hit, but you'll notice like he drops down a little bit in speed. He's down to like 83 or so, and then he's back up to top speed right away, at least while you're in the drift. With top speed in the drift is 85. So he makes it. He doesn't have any slowdown at all. That's the absolute perfect QM you could ask for. And then we get to another infuriating part of the track, which is this pink ramp. Actually, did he hit some water? I'm trying to see if he hit some water. It does look like he hit some water, actually. Like, you'll notice as he gets out of this MT, he is crossing over a little bit of water, and you'll notice, let me go out of full screen, he's not at top speed when he gets through this water patch. He releases the MT, and he's accelerating here. He's at 96.4. So we did hit a little bit of water. He's going to lose a little bit of time. So that leads us to the pink ramp right here. Pink ramp can be absolutely infuriating. A lot of different ways you can take this. You can get good ramps, you can get bad ramps, you can miss the low altogether. You can also hit the corner of the ramp right here, which is the fastest variant, or you can hit the middle of the ramp. But if you time the hop really well, you basically get no air time, and you're back up to top wheelie speed right away. So there's still a few variations, even when you get this really low pink ramp. Different kinds of bounces you can get in the water. They can give a small amount of time save, time gain, even if it looks really good. Like in this case, we'll see. I'm trying to see if they both get good ramps here. Yeah, it actually looks like Casey landed from the pink ramp before Sosis. Despite that, let's compare this lead that Sosis has. So Sosis is up maybe 15 milliseconds or so after the pink ramp. They get pretty close to identical tricks. I'm trying to see, did they get the same trick animation or were they slightly different? It looks like, I think Sosis got a down trick and Casey got an up trick, but we'll see. Despite them looking almost identical, Sosis now has, I would say, 40 millisecond lead. This is pretty substantial for Shy Guy Beach. Like, these 40 millisecond differences, like the middle of lap 1, that's something you really have to work to come back from, especially at the optimization of this track. It's very difficult. So Casey needs to save this time somewhere else. And I don't remember if he does the wheelie strat over the water patch that we looked at earlier in lap 1, but I'm curious how he makes up this time. So let's go ahead and move on from here. Now, you have to hop over this water patch right here, and you want a perfect alignment. As you can see, you hop over it, and then there's just barely enough room to make it through. This is very difficult to do for new players in particular. But to get this well, I will point this out. If you want to make this more consistent, let's pay attention to exactly where he's hopping over the water. There's this stream that goes horizontally outward, and then it goes diagonally. And if you hop around here, or a little bit to the right of it, you'll set yourself up pretty nicely if you just do a left hop. And you can see that's what Casey does. You get it every time. You might still hit some of the water just because it is a very tight gap you have to go through. That being said, Casey's done this a million times. He's very experienced with this track. Not a problem at all. So that takes us into the last turn. A very similar thing here. As we mentioned on the first turn, the sand kind of makes the turn a little bit deceiving. Like if you look at this, it looks like he's just going to drive into the water and the run's going to be over. But you can actually drive a considerable amount into this water. I guess not into the water, but you can almost aim for the water and still be okay. And that's what I try to do. Like you can be right along this edge right here, and you'll be at top speed. So we're exiting lap 1 now, and Casey has a 27.209. I want to go ahead and look at BKS, Shy Guy Beach, no glitch. It's a 145. I'm trying to see, what did Sosis get? Sosis got a 163. So Sosis is actually very close to the BKS here. So with all things considered, like I don't really blame Casey for being down quite a bit. I do want to take a look at BKS and just see exactly what happens. Here we see the spin drift on the first island. Oh, and he gets such a good ramp as well. Like, this is what you would want if you were Casey. You can see he just, like, I thought he was going to miss this ramp, but man, this is crazy. I think I hear Super Mario 64 in the background as well. But yeah, that was a very well driven lap. I think it can go down a little bit. So moving back to the run, Casey's down 46 milliseconds. How does he make this up? Because that is a pretty substantial gap. First thing I notice, actually, let's go back to like the very end of lap 1. They have slightly different lines going into it, so this is a little bit wider, and I think that just comes down to, let me go back up to top speed. Yeah, it comes down to this hop. You'll see they have slightly different alignment. Sosis is pointing farther to the right, whereas Sosis is angled farther to the right, Casey is angled farther to the left. So that kind of influences how they take this last turn as well. And moving out of it, we can see Casey is actually aligned for this tree, so he has to do something about that. Fortunately, there's basically a mandatory rehop right here, so he can probably just angle a bit to the right while he does that. Sosis, on the other hand, let me see what kind of alignment he has. Okay, so we're looking at Sosis's perspective now. This is pretty ideal. It's a little bit wider than you would want to be. Oh, we do have a chain here, which I should also mention. Let's see what kind of chain Sosis gets here. Looks like he gets a half compared to Casey. Casey gets a full chain. So he saves a little bit of time. It looked like Casey was aligned for that tree. I'm trying to see how he fixes that. Okay, it looks like he did wheelie nudge as well when he got to the chain. We'll notice the analog stick. He just barely taps right, and that's enough to dodge the tree. So at this point, I think I prefer to be Casey, honestly, because Sosis is pretty wide here, and this alignment is just better for taking an optimal turn. So yeah, this is all the time save. He was down 46 milliseconds, and he just made it up from the first turn of the track and getting a chain. So underrated part of the track, actually, is just getting a good alignment out of this last turn here. Being as close to this tree on the left here as possible. You want to be just barely to the right of it. That's a perfect alignment. And then just getting a good rehop, getting a good first turn. You can take this turn fairly tight as well, and Casey just does it beautifully. And now Casey's suddenly ahead. He just saved 50 milliseconds on the former world record from a part of the track that nobody ever pays attention to. We see another potential source of time save for Casey. Sosis is angled farther to the right, not wide enough to justify going inside of the tree, but Casey here just has a perfect alignment. It looks like he's going to hit this grass, but it's not the part of the grass that's going to actually slow him down. It's just the texture. So let's move on. And you can see he's a little bit farther ahead than he was here. So you can see Casey is about 10 milliseconds ahead of Sosis. Not too big. Going into the cut, Casey is just driving less of the track. That's all it is. He's just driving less of the track. He's taking the turn tighter. He's going to save more time on Casey. If this shroom goes well, we can see he gets the wheelie out. Unlike the previous lap, he gets the wheelie out. And this is actually like a very good cut. You can wheelie nudge in the cut because you're in a mushroom boost. You can see he's lined up right with where this water is, where this off-road is, taking it as tight as possible. He gets out of the off-road. He's at top speed. You couldn't have asked for anything better. Now, the alignments are slightly different going into the island section. So I do want to look at that. You can see Sosis, I think, has a more ideal alignment. I want to look at Sosis's perspective here. Okay, so exiting the shroom here, in Sosis's perspective, you can see he has an absolutely perfect alignment. Even though his mushroom wasn't perfect, this is exactly what you would want. So going back to Casey's perspective, why is the quality suddenly bad? Hold on. You folks at home deserve better than 480p. And in return, I deserve a subscribe. Anyway, I think Casey is still tight enough to justify spin drifting. He can see he's very close to this edge right here. If you're angled, I think to the left of like this change in the direction of the island, I think that would justify a spin drift. As you can see, that's what he does. So I'll slow it down, and we can just get a better look at what happens here. Yeah, so he does a spin drift. He's getting his wheelies out very nicely, and you can see the wheelies actually do make a substantial difference. Like if you look at his speed while he's going over the island, it's a little hard to tell because the red bar is in the way. I'm going to get rid of that. So pay attention to the speedometer. You can see while he's on the island, he's going up to 87 kilometers an hour, whereas base speed of this, you can see base speed is 85. So that's another 3 kilometers an hour while he's on the island. So it does save considerable time, especially considering there are, 5 islands or so, and you're doing it on all 3 laps. So wheelie is very important. So they have virtually identical lines going into this last island skip here. You can see they get the good QM once again, both of them. It's basically mandatory to get the good QM. So they get the MT out. Sosis is definitely angled. I can't tell if he's going to hit this water or not. I want to go ahead and look at his perspective. So here's Sosis's perspective. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so this is interesting. Sosis, on the other hand, has to wheelie nudge. You can see he's too tight here. He has a pretty substantial wheelie nudge, and it slows him down. He's at 90 kilometers an hour on this frame. But he does get a very good pink ramp. Actually, not better than Casey's former world record. You can see he's still ahead after that, but let's go back to Casey's perspective. And you can see Casey isn't aligned for the edge of the pink ramp. It's kind of hard to align yourself for this. I definitely don't go for the edge of the ramp on a consistent basis. It's very difficult to do that intentionally. But let's go ahead. I want to pay very close attention to the margin between these two ghosts and then compare it afterwards. You can see what the consequence is of not hitting the corner of the ramp. You can see Sosis is almost off-screened as we get to this ramp. You can see how far down he is. Even with a perfect pink ramp, hitting the middle of the ramp like this, it is still slower than hitting a really good ramp on the side. So you can see even with the time loss that Sosis incurred from his very substantial wheelie nudges, he makes up for it getting a really good low ramp. So I mean, I think both of these players lost a considerable amount of time on this section. Regardless, we move on, and Casey now has, I would say, about a 30 millisecond lead on Sosis, 30, maybe 40. And they hit this rehop at about the same place. I'm going to slow it down. So they have slightly different alignments, but they align both for the change in the angle of this this water stream right here. They get the rehop. And it looks like Sosis does a small wheelie nudge. I'm trying to tell. Yeah, he does a very slight one. I don't know if you could see that. Let's pay very close attention to Ghost. Right there. Yeah. So very small wheelie nudge. It's not too substantial because they are both still trying to accelerate from their rehop. But regardless, we enter lap 3. Let's go ahead and take a look at the split here. Okay, we have an 030. Let's go ahead and look at BKS. So BKS is a 26.990, and I'm curious in this BKS if Casey goes over the water stream, if he does that rehop or not. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is Sosis who has the BKS here. Oh, look at that. So he does do it. This is the strat I was referring to, and sorry for the bad quality. But you can see he doesn't do the rehop, and he's just able to get through it on top speed. Let's pay attention to the speedometer. He's at 97 when he goes over it. He drops down to 90, so about a half chain. And considering when you rehop, it's basically like a Kezzer, this is a lot faster. And I'm assuming the rest of this lap is pretty much the same as what we would expect. Not perfect driving, but still very good. So yeah, that's notable. So Casey is down about 40 milliseconds on the best split here. Regardless, he saved about 100 milliseconds over Sosis in this lap too. That is absolutely massive for this category. An 030 is an amazing lap. I think the best lap 2 I've ever hit was what, like a mid 0.2. So this is incredible. Now we have another problem here. Houston, we have a problem. Casey, we have a problem. Let's take a look at this alignment. We don't like what we see here. A few different things you can do. You can obviously nudge during your wheelie. You can straight up go inside the tree, which Guy actually does in his 10th American run. I don't think Casey is tight enough to this tree to justify going to the left of it, but it is an option under some circumstances. In this case, I would probably maybe do a small wheelie nudge and then rehop, and maybe a bit to the left. And that, it looks like that's exactly what he does. This was actually a pretty substantial rehop at that. So he changes his direction during his wheelie nudge. I'm going to slow it down so we can get a good idea of what's happening. Okay, so speedometer drops down to 92 kilometers an hour. I would say that's about a half chain, including the wheelie nudge. And when he rehops, he just goes a bit to the right, and he's able to dodge the tree without much of a problem. I think this lost a little bit of time. If he had a perfect chain, perfect alignment, he would probably be 20, 30 milliseconds faster. That being said, he's still ahead of world record, so he has some wiggle room, but not a lot. So I am curious what happens after this first turn, and if he still has the 60 millisecond lead, considering what happened here. And I don't know if this looks like 60 milliseconds. Let's see. Here's 61 milliseconds, and you can see the ghost is almost off screen. I think if the ghost were right behind Casey, it wouldn't be off screen. It would kind of be, I think it's kind of hard to visualize. But I don't think he still has a 61 millisecond lead after this first turn right here. You can see Sosis he just has a better angle for it. Actually, I wouldn't say he has a better angle, but it's just different. Let's take a look at how Sosis does it. So he's a little bit wide. He actually rehops to the left, but he's able to take the turn a little bit more aggressively since he's a little wider. That being said, we already said that it is better to be as tight as possible, so I think Casey actually does have the advantage going into that turn. That being said, I don't think this is 60 milliseconds. I would estimate probably 40 to 50 now, so I think he lost a little bit. And we do notice the alignments are very different exiting this turn. The alignments are so different entering the turn, I think it's reasonable to expect the exits would also be a little bit different. I think Casey should have held his MT a little bit longer because he is pretty wide here. And I think looking at this angle, that would justify going inside the tree right here. Sosis, what does Sosis have? Now Sosis is actually a little bit too tight here. He has to wheelie nudge to the right, so he's going to lose a little bit of time. It's not perfect. But he's able to go through the grass just because that's not where the off-road is exactly. But let's look at how Casey deals with this. Okay, so he chains, he gets a full chain wheelie. And he actually doesn't go to the left of the tree, he actually goes to the right of it. So he is taking some time loss doing that. And I think he's kind of at an awkward position with this alignment. It's easy to justify going to the left of the tree if you're angled, somewhere around here. But when you're at this angle where Casey is, it's kind of hard to say for sure whether it's better to go inside or outside of the tree. And it's just an awkward angle. It's not perfect for going to the left of the tree. It's not perfect for going to the right of the tree. He kind of has an intermediate alignment that is bound to lose time regardless. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable going to the left of the tree here, so if he does go to the right, he's going to have to take the turn wide, and it looks like that is what happens here. So he gets his chain wheelie. Sosis is quite a bit tighter, and you can see he gets the MT out quite a bit before Sosis does, just because he took the turn wider. He started his drift earlier. That being said, he's going to lose a little bit of time here, and you can see Sosis is a little bit closer than he was before. It wasn't super substantial, also because Sosis didn't do it perfectly either, but there is some time loss. So moving on, we see slightly different alignments going into the islands right here. We can see Sosis is aligned closer to the left once again. On all 3 laps, this is what we saw. On the other hand, Casey, I don't think this is an angle where you would want to spin drift. Let's see if he does. Yeah, so he just rehops like normal. So let's watch this whole section at top speed, and then we'll slow it down, and we'll take a better look. Yeah, honestly, that was very well done. Like, I don't notice any substantial time losses in this section. It's still going to be notable since they take different angles into this first island. I want to look at what the margin is between the ghosts after they exit. So he gets through the islands, and he hits the water patch around the same spot every single time. It's not the absolute tightest gap. So like you can see right here, the distance between the islands right here is smallest right here, but it's actually most consistent if you're a little bit to the left of this. To get this like island skip where you can just drift through the water and not lose any speed. And it is better for taking this following turn as well. And despite what it looks like, it looked like Casey hit a bit of the water right here. You'll see right here, he's literally driving through the water. You would think that would slow him down, but he is kind of at this white portion of the water where it's not considered off-road quite yet. So he is still at top speed when he goes through that. Now going into this pink ramp, it looks like the gap is once again a tiny bit smaller, and also Casey is going for the big part of the ramp and not the smaller part, not the edge of the ramp like Sosis is. This could be very bad for Casey. If Sosis gets a perfect ramp here, and even if Casey gets a perfect ramp here, they could end up neck and neck going into this last section. So I'm very curious what happens. And once again, Casey loses time. And we'll see. It's so much faster when you're able to just take the edge of the ramp like that. Like, let's look from Sosis's perspective what exactly happens here. Yeah, you can see he just stays so much closer to the ground. You can see a good comparison right here with Casey's former world record. it's just straight up faster. You get to the ground faster, you get back up to top speed faster. It can still get bad QM, you can still get bad QM with any way you take the ramp, but in general, it's just faster to hit the side of the ramp. Now, Casey does improve the world record by 30 milliseconds, so let's watch this finish and see actually what happens. Now, this is pretty interesting because it doesn't actually look like Casey did it substantially better than Sosis. In fact, coming into this last turn right here, it looks like Sosis is going to save some time on Casey, but he just gets the empty out quite a bit earlier than Sosis does going into the finish. And going into the rehop, they have somewhat different alignments. Sosis is a little bit farther to the right than Casey is. They get the rehop, and then I would say Casey's angle is better. Sosis, well, actually, I was going to say Casey's angle is better after this rehop, but you'll notice Sosis does a wheelie nudge, a little bit of a wheelie nudge, and I think that right to left angle actually makes it better for him, even though he incurred a little bit of time loss. You can see he's just a little bit tighter going into this last turn, but because Casey starts to drift a tiny bit earlier than Sosis does, that is enough to secure him the world record, get the empty out a little bit faster, and he finishes with a 121.363. So that's the entirety of the run. I still think BKS can get pushed down a little bit. Is a 120 possible? I would want to see some improvements to the BKS before we can make that determination. At the moment, I think this could go down. Oh, wait, I just moved the tab. I think this could go down to like a 121.2, maybe a 250. Beyond that, I think we would definitely start looking for other strategies to use. Again, we would definitely, first thing I would point out would be the water strat. Did he go for it in this run at all? No, he rehopped like all 3 laps. So I think that saves, like, getting the wheelie through the water patch there saves what, like 30 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, something like that. Do that in all 3 laps. I mean, you're already at a 0.2. Clean up the driving. BKS can still go down to like a point, give a 0.0, maybe even a 120 eventually. But I think we would definitely need some new strategies before I can confidently say a 120 is possible. That being said, this is a very strong run. It is one of the least played tracks in this game, so I think it's interesting to kind of give a perspective into one of the more underrated world records in my opinion. One more thing, I really do enjoy making these videos. Please do give me feedback. It is a big motivating factor for me to continue making these. So yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Follow my socials down below, and I will see you all next time.